What's up everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Panos, I'm a real world Airbus pilot, and in today's video we have something different for you. And that would be the demonstration tutorial for the no-flight director's takeoff that we use in the Airbus aircraft. Now, there are several reasons for a pilot to perform a no-FD takeoff. The main one of them would be in order to train. And why we train for that? We usually train for that just in case we lose the flight directors during takeoff. There are also other reasons. Actually, it's the practice and some avoidance misleading from flight director commands. Now, this is actually a standard maneuver, I would say, not a demanding one. Could be demanding in takeoff, actually, only if we are not trained to do so. However, you will all see that it's gonna be very easy to do it, provided, of course, that we have correctly set up the aircraft in the pre-flight phase. So, how we do that? First of all, we make sure that we have set up our FCU properly for our departure. And here we are today in Frankfurt, utilizing an RNAV departure actually, and generally it's very difficult to find a conventional departure in order to perform a normal no-FD takeoff. However, for the purpose of video, we are going to follow the headings according to the ND, and we are going to fly the proper departure laterally and vertically. So the initial heading for us is going to be 246 for the Oboka 5 Gold departure. We are climbing at 5,000 feet for this reason, and we have calculated our takeoff speeds with a V2 of 173, and that's what we are going to set on our FCU. So V2 173, the heading it's going to be 246 initially, and the altitude at 5,000 feet. As you can see, we have no FMA, no auto thrust active, no other modes active. And now let's proceed on the holding point and discuss a little bit of how we are going to perform the no-FD takeoff. Should worth mentioning as well that for the purposes of the tutorial, I have completely switched off the Say Intentions AI with the ATC communications. Alright. Cabin is ready. Perfect. Here we are now in the holding point, and we are going to discuss now how we are going to perform the takeoff without the flight directors. So initially, it's going to be quite normal, advancing the thrust levers to the flex, detent. See, we have already calculated the flex, and despite the fact that we don't have flight directors, the thrust levers can be moved in flex, and they will give us the calculated thrust for our takeoff. The proper pull-out thereafter would be no FMA, because we don't have any FMA. And once we have reached V1, we continue the takeoff normally, and on V-rotate, we rotate the aircraft normally without any other things to our takeoff pitch, which would be between 12.5 and 15 degrees. And then we continue normally again with positive climb, raise the gear up. At 1000 feet AGL, we move the thrust levers back to climb, and that's actually our thrust reduction altitude. So before we move our thrust levers to climb, we make sure that we select the climb speed. What that climb speed would be? That climb speed would be according to our FMS, to our MCDU, according to any restrictions we have on SID, and things like that. So initially, we have a V2 of 173. We have a slats reduction speed of 235, so for these reasons we will maintain the slats and the flaps as configuration and retract them after Delta Fox 234. Thereafter we have 220 on Delta Fox 133, so that would be the case for Delta Fox 133, and we continue normally after Delta Fox 133 with the flap retraction and the acceleration. Once we make sure that we have cleaned up the aircraft, at any point we can of course engage all the automation. And how we do that? First of all, we activate the auto thrust, provided of course we have selected climb speed. We do that because if we didn't select the climb speed and turn on the auto thrust, the thrust commanded, it would be set actually to 100 knots, so we will have a thrust reduction, and we don't want that, especially in this phase of flight, close to the ground, with heavy weights and so on. After that, we make sure and we read our FMA that we have the appropriate auto thrust mode with the auto thrust engaged, and then and only then we can engage the flight directors, so flight directors on would be the call out, and then we will engage the appropriate modes. For our case today would be managed nav, managed speed, and managed climb, or 5,000 feet managed, so whatever altitude it is, managed. And that's the proper callouts, and from then and on we can continue our flight properly. So with that completed, I assume now we are ready to go for takeoff and see that in action. Perfect. So let's go. No weather radar for today. It should worth mentioning as well that in the new Airbuses like the A350, it's a little bit different the way we are taking off without FDs, but for the rest of the Airbuses like the 320 family, the 330 and the 340, it's more or less the same procedure. So there we are on runway 25 center. And we are good to go. So takeoff. No FMA. Thrust set, 100 knots, check. Rotate, nice and slowly, aiming for 12.5 to 15 degrees, positive climb, gear up, and that's it. We are aiming for the speed now. It needs a little bit less angle, and we are aiming for the next waypoint, Delta Fox 133. We are already at 1000 feet, just leave us go to climb, and we check that on the screen. Set heading now 272. Already above the acceleration altitude, set speed 210. And slowly we are accelerating towards 210. Select heading 240. Let's turn on this transponder because I forgot to do that. There we are, and that's our appropriate heading we should follow at the moment, 2854, and we can now proceed with the acceleration of the aircraft. So we bring the nose a little bit down, flaps 1, speed check, flaps 1, select speed 250, speed 250, and assume now that the ATC has cleared us to a higher altitude. So let's say flight level 160. Set altitude 16,000, set. We are gonna need a little bit more nose down. Transition, set standard. Standard, cross check, pass flight level 53. Now, check. And now we can see that the airspeed is almost on the maximum speed. For this reason we have the auto flaps retraction. Let's head for the next heading, which would be something like at the case of 289. Let's turn on that heading. You can see the aircraft slowly accelerating. Flap 0, speed check, flap 0. And we make sure we don't go above speed 250 with a little bit of nose up. Let's get that track as well. At the turning point from now on, whenever it's convenient, we can set up the appropriate modes and engage the automation back again. So how we do that? Remember, engage first of all the auto thrust, provided we have a speed selected. We have speed 250, auto thrust on. Make sure we read the FMA, speed, auto thrust wide, check. And now we can turn on all the flight directors and so. So flight directors on. We read the FMA, they engage in basic mode. So vertical speed plus 2500, heading 132, check. Manage nav, manage climb, thrust climb, climb. And now we are flying using the standard method for an Airbus, actually, according to the FCOMs, using the flight directors and climbing normally throughout the flight. We can also set manual speed. And last but not least, we can engage autopilot and continue with the flight. So, autopilot 2. Well, guys, this was a tutorial on how we fly the Airbus aircraft without a flight director during takeoff. Another thing I would like to mention here is the use of toga mode in case we have an engine failure, and that's actually a technique we use because when we engage the toga mode, we automatically get the flight directors in SRS mode, and for this reason it would be very helpful for us to follow them in order to continue with the engine out during takeoff. I hope that helped you a lot, so I will see you again with the next tutorial I'm preparing, and that would be with the raw data ILS using the bed. So for the moment, thank you very much for watching my video. Feel free to make any suggestions down in the comment section below, and until my next tutorial, have safe flights. See you soon.